The noise of the city, narrow streets, fluffy snow was flying. The pre-Christmas mood enveloped the city, but not everyone. Time for confessions. He never loved her. The man walked slowly down the street and stopped. It was a serious conversation on the phone. He needed to give answers. They were waiting on the other end of the line. No, there were no feelings. He was in no hurry. His hands were freezing. He needed to tell her everything. From the first meeting, he had not considered Yumin as his beloved. There are many forms of love in the world. It doesn't have to be serious feelings, the guy said. Around the corner, someone was feeding a shivering kitten. The girl sat down next to the bowl and couldn't take another step. The voice said there would be a wedding. Yumin wanted her. She was the lifeline for his family. He would do anything for the bride, the voice said. The girl sat around the corner. It was cold, but she continued to listen. He will even say that he loves her as much as he wants, the man said. Tears gushed. The pain in her soul from the realization twisted the girl into a ball. At this time, there were a lot of people in the cafe. Some were buying drinks at the bar. Some were working on their laptops. At the next table, a couple was discussing someone else's relationship. Yumin didn't hear or notice anyone. She was silently looking out the window. She was called out. The guy opposite was looking at something on his tablet. It seemed they were not together. Then he decided to start a conversation. The man asked if she had thought about the place of their wedding ceremony. The girl was silent. She hated him. She was the one who overheard her boyfriend's conversation. Accidentally. The pain was crushing her soul. Yumin was forcing herself to gather her will into a fist and tell him to go to hell. It was hard. But she couldn't forget the feelings she had felt then, squatting. It hurt to hear every word. Her hands began to tremble. The groom continued to say that he liked the place they were looking at. Yumin abruptly interrupted him by asking if he was ready to get married. The guy started to assure her that he was incredibly lucky with her. And how could she even ask? The girl continued to look out the window. His speeches were sweet. They met a long time ago. She always liked this feature of his. The handsome man knew how to speak smoothly. If only she knew that everything would turn out like this. The convoluted speeches continued. He said that it was only for her because he loved. But Yumin knew the value of these words. The guy wanted to take her hands in his own. The brunette pulled away. She didn't want to. She asked what she should do next. She turned to him. She smiled so tenderly and sincerely, said so sweetly that she was so tired of him. She smiled sweetly. And in her soul there was a burning hope that the guy would feel as much pain as she did under the snow. Yumin's hands involuntarily clenched in anger, and she suggested that they just pretend that they hadn't talked about the wedding. There was very little time left. People around who had involuntarily become witnesses were upset. It seemed that everyone heard. Their whispers were heard, that she threw laughing, that on Christmas Eve. The guy was confused. He certainly didn't expect such a turn of events. The tablet was put aside. He asked why such a sudden decision. Yumin played with her hair with her hand and continued to laugh sweetly. She enjoyed the taste of revenge. To be honest, she suddenly realized that she was too good for him. The game of a girl who was immensely in love with herself worked. Besides, she was just tired of him. After all, you can't command your heart. The neighbors at the table turned around. What a bitch, they thought. Wasn't it enough for the guy to have spent 6 whole years of his life on him? She continued the conversation. The bartender at the counter spilled his juice from what he heard. She hesitated a little. After all, there were feelings, but she said that it was necessary to end here. A smile shone from her. 3 months passed. Life went on. The streets of the city were warm. Couples in love were walking. They really irritated Yumin, especially when they were in her way, and so she had to drag this terribly heavy bag. She turned around. The couple was really cute, but she didn't like that they were discussing and gossiping behind her back. Memories immediately came flooding back. She too had recently been the little one in the couple. She had been the beloved girl. She froze for a moment. It was so beautiful. She envied them in a good way. Love is beautiful. Yumin realized that she still hadn't recovered from the insult. A lump of tears rose in her throat. Many years were wasted. It was an illusion of love that was destroyed, despite all efforts to maintain the relationship. The office was in full swing. The girls were all at work. The silence was dissolved by the sound of keyboards and the solving of problems. Yumin tried to slip in quietly, but she didn't go unnoticed. The girls were surprised that she came to work so late. She continued to drag her bag. She was late, having spent the entire morning walking around the market looking for samples. The bag wouldn't give in to her. Some of the samples ended up on the floor. The colleague asked her to drop everything. Yumin should go and rest. The bag was piled on the chair, and the girl listened to the advice and went to the restroom. The girls were collecting samples while discussing her. Yumin had been working hard for the past 3 months. They were worried that she would be okay. The girl was lying in the lounge. Her head was a mess of thoughts. Of course she could hear the girls discussing her behind the door. Yumin tried to put it all together. It was stupid to act like that. After all, she herself decided to break up, and she knew the reason. She spent so many years and hard work building this company. It would be stupid to ruin it all because of heartache. She decided that she needed to calm down, relax. There was no point in thinking about her ex, but she needed to sleep. She closed her eyes. She couldn't fall asleep. Anger won. She hated him madly for everything. She even shuddered and jumped up. The door opened. The colleague, holding 2 cups in her hands, looked into the room. She wanted to see if the girl was sleeping. Yumin stood up. She hadn't been sleeping. The girl tried to assure him that she was indeed okay. The employee brought her some warm tea. It was worth drinking. Yumin's appearance scared her colleagues. "You can't work so hard," the friend asked. The girl was drinking pleasant tea. She agreed. The employee understood perfectly well the reason for such obsession with work. The breakup with her boyfriend was to blame. She was worried about her friend. The colleague was also worried about how Yumin would conduct business in the future in this state. He would have to try not to mention his ex, and then it dawned on her friend. She called out to Yumin and suggested that they go to a certain place. The girl was surprised by such an offer, but she was glad to see him. She assured him that she felt great. The colleague started talking about the girl who advertises their bags. Today is her birthday, and her friend suggested going together to have fun and unwind. At first, Yumin thought about it. She thought about it while drinking warm tea, and immediately agreed. In the evening, the girls got together and went to the club. There were a lot of people. It was very noisy and difficult to hear anything. They were met by Soyeon. It was the birthday girl. She thanked them for coming. The girls congratulated her. The gift was given. Soyeon said that there were many of her friends there. She asked them not to be shy, to talk and to help themselves. They let her go to the guests. Yumin was in a hurry to start having fun. "Let's go eat and drink," she suggested. Her friend asked her to slow down. She needed to go to the restroom. As Yumin continued to stomp around the room, she noticed how unusual this noise was for her. It had been a long time since she had been to a party like this. She noticed a lot of people filming themselves on their phones, hosting live broadcasts. It seemed she even remembered these bloggers from social networks. The girl seemed to be renewed in this environment. When life was in full swing around her, she herself seemed to come to life. Having taken some snacks, she found a free table. She sat alone and munched. It was interesting to eavesdrop and watch everyone around her. Suddenly, Yumin noticed a cute guy at the next table. She watched. He was also apparently alone. She wanted to start a conversation. She asked if he was Soyeon's friend. The answer was a short no. Yumin felt awkward. She hadn't met a guy for a long time. So he wasn't a friend, the girl clarified. Too shy, apparently. The brunette wanted to continue the dialogue. "She came here with a friend, and did he try the dishes at the celebration?" she said. The answers were stingy. It was clear to him. No, he did not try. The dialogue didn't go well. Yumin gradually started getting angry. After all, the guy had turned on the ignore button and didn't even look at her. Suddenly, he asked her not to talk to him anymore. The handsome man turned to her and stared. His gaze showed all his hostility towards the girl he didn't know yet. Now Yumin could see him. "Well, if he doesn't want to talk, then he won't anymore," she chuckled. The unwavering gaze lasted for a couple of minutes. Suddenly, the guy came closer. The brunette jumped up from surprise. He scared her. What did he need? She was scared. The handsome man suddenly asked if they had ever met. Yumin thought it was strange. Just now he didn't want to talk, and now he started a conversation. How quickly the man's mood changed. She hadn't seen him before. Exhaling, she began to chew the treats. The handsome man asked if she was a celebrity or a singer. But no, she was an ordinary person. It's not clear. It looked like flirting. Maybe he liked her. Or maybe he just really confused her with someone else. Strange guy. Such flirting phrases have not been used for a long time, Yumin thought, continuing to chew. And yet the man was handsome. Even such clumsy flirting did not spoil him. For some reason he sat staring at one point. Apparently he was thinking about something. The tense atmosphere was broken when the phone on the table vibrated. The girl called out. Someone was calling him. The handsome man answered the call. And yet he was strange, Yumin thought. And she noticed that her friend was still hanging around somewhere. The guy jumped up abruptly. The chair couldn't stand up because of this and fell to the floor. It was sudden. He ran away. The brunette was surprised by such behavior. She was scared. The man ran through the hall without noticing anyone. I wonder where he ran to, Yumin thought. Maybe something had happened. Something had been said on the phone. She was now sitting alone at the table waiting for her friend. The brunette glanced at the floor. In the general noise and rumble in his haste, the man did not notice how he dropped his wallet. There was also an ID lying on the floor. It must have fallen out of the wallet. The handsome guy's name was Hendo. That's how they met. The girl ran out into the street. I wonder where he went. She was in a hurry to find the guy to give him the wallet. She was in such a hurry, but she was exhausted from running. Tired. I wonder where he could have gone, the girl thought. Maybe he could do without his wallet. It won't work. The girl understood that she wouldn't find it that way. So she decided to go back and give the wallet to the administrator. He might come back himself. Suddenly, Yumin heard someone's male voice and stopped. He was scolding someone. He was indignant. He asked how she found him. He was not himself. The voice seemed familiar. The girl came closer. Carefully, so as not to be noticed, she looked out from around the corner. Yumin carefully approached to see who was there and froze. But all she could see was the man's silhouette, his broad back. The girl didn't go any closer. She tried to see who it was. It seemed like it was the same guy she was trying to catch up with. She surreptitiously saw a small silhouette in front of the man. It was most likely the girl who was making excuses that she had seen him on social media. Hendo scolded his interlocutor that he was tired of explaining to her. The girl around the corner realized that this was a lover's quarrel. Apparently, it was time to go back. The next sentence made her stop. He said he dated her out of pity, not because he loved her. How familiar that was. He kept saying that he couldn't go on like this. Hoen didn't want to volunteer. He didn't need it anymore. The guy grabbed his face with his hand. He couldn't stand this behavior any longer. It felt like she didn't understand what they were talking about. And it happened every time. Hoen looked at his interlocutor with a tired look. He wanted to stop and just go their separate ways. Yumin continued to stand and listen to someone else's conversation. Every word made her more and more upset. He said not to pick on him anymore. The girl drew parallels in her head. She remembered hearing the same conversation from her boyfriend. Her hand angrily squeezed her wallet. Then a female voice became audible. The girl said that she was sure Hoen would still be with her for the rest of her life. And one day he would tell her again that he loved her. The guy listened to the answer in silence. His cheekbones clenched. He was furious. Maybe it would have been like that, but not now. Now he no longer wanted to pretend that he loved. The interlocutor shuddered from resentment and pain. Hendo said that she was happy because of him for many years. But he no longer wants to play a lover. It was always difficult for him. The situation was heating up. Suddenly, the guy felt a sharp blow to the back of his head from some object. Although soft, it was unexpected. Yumin was standing behind him. She was the one who threw something at him. Her expression was clearly not kind. Memories came flooding back. He was just like her ex-lover. Just as cruel a deceiver. She remembered squatting and hearing that horrible conversation. When she learned that she had never been loved as a woman, I remembered how tears flowed like hail, and my heart was torn apart by pain. It is so scary to understand that all confessions were out of gratitude. She clenched her fist. How she regretted not using it on that bastard. Now she really wanted to. Hoen was taken aback. He hadn't expected something to come flying from behind. He grabbed the back of his head with his hand where the blow had just landed. He looked back. The veins on his face tensed. He didn't even know how to react. Yumin was there. Her hands were clenched into fists. She thought if she had done this back then, it would have been easier for her. She drew parallels in her head. And suddenly she realized that now another man was standing in front of her. She realized what she had done. The friend went out into the hall. There really were so many people here it was easy to get lost. She couldn't even find Yumin right away. Suddenly, in one of the corners of the hall, the girl saw her friend. She was sitting at a table and smiling sweetly at someone. They were talking. I wonder who she's chatting with, her friend thought. There was a handsome young man sitting next to her. Perhaps she knew him. The colleague was very surprised by this. It turned out that the friend was not sitting alone. She did not know that there was someone else she knew here. Suddenly, someone came up from behind, very close, and it seemed he was looking in the same direction as she was. It was unexpected. The girl turned around abruptly. She got scared. The guy started apologizing abruptly. He didn't want anyone to think badly of him. He was just looking at his friend too. The girl realized that they were talking about Yumin's companion, but she still decided to clarify. She asked, "Maybe you are a friend of that guy," pointing at the handsome man at the table. The guy next to her was a little taken aback. He confirmed. The friend decided to find out more. For example, maybe he was lonely. It was true. The girl decided not to miss the opportunity and try to introduce the guys. After all, Yumin was also alone. The blonde blushed from the unexpectedness of such questions. And then he said that he was lonely too. Isn't that good for them? The girl didn't understand why he said that. It was unexpected. Apparently he was flirting. The guy was blonde and quite cute, but he was clearly younger. She doubted it. It could interfere and end badly. Through the noise of general conversations in the hall, they heard some kind of rumble. It became unclear what had suddenly happened. Turning around, they were both surprised. There was no one in their friend's place. The table was empty and the chair was lying on the floor. Yumin froze in front of the guy's gaze. She herself was surprised by what she did. Hoen was confused and angry. Why was she here, he asked. Was she following him? Another followed. The girl felt uncomfortable. She didn't know how to explain. No, she didn't follow, she just followed. It was unpleasant because of his rudeness. But he was right. She lost her composure because of her emotions. Now she will probably have troubles. The unknown girl stood behind the guy and pulled her cap down lower. Hoen was indignant. He wanted to know if she was taking pictures or filming since she was following him. But Yumin didn't have to do that. The guy couldn't understand why she followed him like a rat back then. It offended the girl. The brunette didn't want to be thought of like that. She immediately noticed what she had thrown. Only now did Hoen see that it was his wallet. Yumin decided to show her indignation. She followed him to give him the wallet and he called her names. And it doesn't matter that she threw the wallet at the guy. The man exhaled. The girl did not follow him. Looking back, he noticed that the previous interlocutor had already disappeared. Yumin was angry, but she didn't want to continue this conversation any longer. The guy realized that she probably didn't know who he was talking to. Hoen calmed down. He decided that he needed to apologize. After all, he had misunderstood everything. He was worried at first. The guy thanked him for returning the wallet. Perhaps a reward was needed. Yumin refused. She wanted him to leave quickly. But the way the wallet was returned was still unique, the handsome man noted. The girl shuddered at the remark. She remembered her action. Hoen slowly put the wallet in the inside pocket of his coat. In a calm voice, he asked if the girl always returned things like that, throwing them at the back of her head. Yumin mentally imagined herself saying that she did it because she was so angry. At the same time, she reassured herself that she didn't need to do any more thoughtless actions. Having calmed down, she realized that she still needed to apologize. The girl said that she just wanted to return the wallet as soon as possible. Pretending to be embarrassed and innocent, Yumin really wanted to appear sincere. She asked if her blow hurt a lot. The guy looked at her, realizing that it seemed she didn't regret it after all. Yes, she didn't regret it at all. She even apologized and quickly said that she had to go. There were only them in the dark alley. Hoen also decided that he was leaving. Unexpectedly for herself, the girl suggested that they go back together. Yumin quickly found her friend when she returned. The girl was looking for her and couldn't figure out where she had gone. The brunette wanted water, then all the stories. Jiki was not alone. 4 guys greeted each other and introduced themselves. The guys and girls were friends. The friend, under the pretext that they were getting drinks, hurried to pick up Yumin to find out the details. And the 2 of them walked through the hall towards the bar. Jiki interrogated them. What were they doing with that guy on the street? But they convinced her that nothing like that happened. There won't be an interesting story. It was simple. He dropped his wallet, his girlfriend returned it. However, she missed several other events that happened. The colleague was surprised. Was that really all? After all, the girl was gone for quite a long time. But Yumin was setting her mind on her own and asked to quickly find something to drink. At this time, the blonde also questioned his friend. He was also interested in what he was doing on the street with this beautiful girl. But Hoen was clearly dissatisfied. He started yelling at his friend. After all, he for some reason banned it on social networks that they went to relax in their own place. The friend knew that Hoen didn't like to be photographed, and now he was very angry. He got into the frame completely by accident. The friend apologized. The handsome man exhaled, saying that it didn't matter anymore. And anyway, he was about to leave. The friend began to be indignant. Why did he come back then? The blonde wanted to persuade his friend to stay. He didn't need to go to work. They met some beautiful girls. Maybe they should have a drink with them. But Hoen was adamant. He said that he was not interested in it now and was not in the mood. He turned around and resolutely left. The streets of the night city were full of movement. It was necessary to watch the road carefully. But curiosity overwhelmed the girl and she wanted to talk. She called out to her friend and asked how long she was going to wear it. She didn't specify what exactly, but they both understood each other. The passenger realized that she was lost in thought and had not noticed that she had not yet taken off her wig and cap. Thanks to this, she was trying to remain unnoticed. With a quick movement, she tore it all off herself, and in an instant they flew to the next seat. The driver asked why she was so late, and whether she had managed to talk to Hendo this time. The girl in the back seat was already completely on her phone. Yes, she talked, but apparently the guy needed a little more time. The conversation failed. The girl was not only in the car but on all the billboards in the city. She took another selfie in the back seat, and calmly, with a smile, she said that he keeps saying hurtful things to her. It seems this beauty didn't care about the words that were said to her. Apparently she believed that the guy was telling her everything insincerely. If someone else had said such nasty things to her, she would have believed them. But she couldn't comprehend that Hendo could leave her. She knew perfectly well that even now he was sitting at home. And despite the previous conversation, he was waiting for her call. This girl was incredibly confident. What she was thinking about at such moments was unclear. Now she was worried about one thing. She didn't know who had interrupted their conversation by throwing something at the guy. It was probably one of the haters who had been trying to terrorize her lately. That's why they were watching the guy. Then, frightened by this, she decided to sneak away. Later, she would be able to contact Hendo by phone. As Soyeon left, she froze for a minute, listening. And then she decided to look back. And she was very surprised to see an ordinary girl there, which means she wasn't stalking Soyeon. She was stalking a guy. In that case, it doesn't really matter. Empty apartment. Silence. Bachelor pad atmosphere, almost no comfort, cold and empty. There were several cans of beer on the table, a couple of which were already empty. In front of them lay a phone, waiting for a call from someone important. Hoen took one of the cans, wanted to continue drinking. His gaze periodically fell on the phone, but he was silent. He squeezed one of the cans in anger. Memories of the messages flashed in his head. How she waited outside in the cold, and he ran immediately. He couldn't believe that he was a fool and was flying to her at the first call. The guy put his face in his hand. He didn't even notice how he spilled his beer. The foaming yellow liquid spread across the table. Some of it got on the phone. The guy sighed. Maybe he won't answer her calls now. Taking a pack of napkins, he tried to restore order. He didn't want to do that anymore. He didn't want to come only if he called. Hendo's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a message. Despite the fact that the phone was wet, it vibrated intensely. The guy threw away the napkins in surprise. Grabbing the phone, he began to scroll through the messages with greed and impatience. His eyes were looking for the very thing he was expecting. But damn, it was a message from a friend. He had left it behind when he went home. Now he was calling him back, promising an entertaining evening. Tegan sent a photo. The same two girls were next to him. He continued to communicate with them. Hoen zoomed in on one of the girls in the photo. The one who hit him. She looked familiar after all. But he couldn't figure out where from. I couldn't get this question out of my head. I couldn't remember. Maybe she came to their store once. He stopped his thoughts. This was not what he wanted to think about. It was not important now. After all, they would not meet again. But he was wrong. So-chan was sitting in the office of her modeling agency. It was a cozy, bright room. On the walls were pictures of the best models, including her. She was enjoying her popularity as always. She looked at her Instagram page, studying the number of likes and comments. The girl couldn't help but think about Hendo. It was like an addiction. Even in the search, the first page was his friend's page and the restaurant's page. It was a pity that he didn't have a page himself. She wanted to know what he lived for. The restaurant would be opening soon, a couple of days left. And here he is in the photo as the head chef. So Sean was upset. There was practically nothing to learn here. There was little significant news, but this wasn't his page. It was possible to guess. The only thing he apparently did was sports and a restaurant. Or maybe not. The only one who could see him was the director. The studio was suddenly entered. The girl's thoughts were interrupted when she was called out. She was not particularly happy about this. The boss brought a new stylist, reminding Sochan about it. She herself was thinking only about texting the guy, practically not hearing anyone now. The new stylist was introduced. It was a nice girl named Hogan. She was asked if she knew who was in front of her and who she would have to work with. Seochan looked up from her phone and greeted the newcomer. They were both happy to meet each other and expressed hope for fruitful cooperation. The boss called the new stylist to follow her. The girl was delighted and did not believe that she would have to work with Sochan. The model returned to her phone and couldn't help but write a few text messages. She wanted to know where Hoan was and lived. The guy saw the text message that came. He moved because of her. If he wants, he will come to the cafe. He wanted to write her this in response, but he changed his mind. Walking down the street, he hid the phone again. There was no point in writing this to her. He had already suggested breaking up. It would be better that way. Let her also find out for herself how hard it is. It's hard to be in constant anticipation of a person you can't even contact. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by some rustling. Hoan stopped to look at what was there. There were 2 cute kittens, a red one and a gray one. The guy was madly in love with animals. And kittens are so cute. He couldn't resist and decided to take pictures of them. Suddenly the phone rang. It was Tegan, not now. He interrupted a more interesting activity. After accepting the call, Hoan answered irritably. If nothing serious was needed from him, he would end the call. He was busy. The friend asked to listen. The news was unexpected. A friend invited someone to their cafe before opening. The guy became angry and shocked. The girls were sitting in a cafe during their lunch break. A friend told Yumin that one of the guys from the club invited them to dinner. There were a few days left before the cafe opened. But Taegyun decided to invite his friend and treat her in advance before the opening. Yumin remembered that when they were on vacation, it was mentioned that the director of that cafe was that handsome guy. It became interesting to go, but at the same time, after she threw it at him, she felt uncomfortable crossing paths with him. She didn't even want to see him. She didn't want to go. But her friend encouraged her. She convinced her that it was not far and the food there was delicious. And anyway, she liked going to restaurants. Noticing Yumin's reaction, the colleague smirked. She knew something had happened between them back then, she said. Something was wrong. So that's why she doesn't want to go, her friend goaded her. Yumin tried to convince her that it wasn't that. But it was no use. And then the friend touched on the sore spot, saying that apparently she didn't want to date a new man because of her ex. Yumin got angry. That's not the point. She was freaking out. Both guys met them at the door. The girls had arrived early. Hoan was in a chef's uniform. It was unexpected. And he was clearly not very happy to see them. The girls thanked her for the invitation. Yumin wasn't particularly happy. She only came because her friend managed to persuade her. The cafe was very cozy and beautiful. It turned out to be quite a beautiful place. Fresh renovation and nice design. The girls didn't come empty-handed. Seeing a beautiful bouquet, they couldn't resist and bought it in the cafe, hoping that it would fit into the interior. Yumin stood next to the cook. Neither of them expected to meet like this. They were awkward, both were silent. She broke the silence by handing him a package. There was a small present from her, too. She also congratulated him on the opening. Hoan took the package. He casually looked inside. There was a bottle of red wine. The guy sincerely thanked him for the congratulations. The girls were asked to sit down wherever they liked, to take a comfortable place. Nodding, Hoan called his friend to follow him. While the girls were sitting at the table, discussing and taking pictures, the guys were busy in the kitchen, cooking and tidying everything up. While they were waiting, Yumin looked around. Apparently their office was also near this cafe. There were people wandering around the street. There were familiar houses in the distance. Her ex lived nearby too. She hoped that at this very moment he wouldn't pass by. Lost in thought, she stared out the window. There was a feeling that deep down she still expected to see him walking down the street. At this time the boys had already set the table. They brought a lot of delicious food, and they set it up very beautifully. The girlfriends thanked them. Yumin took a bite of the first dish. She was overwhelmed by the taste. It was unexpectedly insanely delicious. She looked at the chef with admiration. Tegan boasted that despite the lack of advertising, They have many regular customers. Having tried it, the girls confirmed how delicious it is. Apparently, they will become one of them. Yumin glanced at her neighbor at the table. She imagined him preparing this food. He was handsome in his place, and apparently very talented. She continued chewing piece after piece. In principle, character and talent do not necessarily have to be equally good, the girl thought. The dinner was very tasty, and the company was pleasant as it turned out. The plates were quickly emptied. Tegan really wanted to pay for the photo of the gifts the girls brought. To show grateful clients, the girlfriends agreed. A friend asked Hendo about his social media page. After all, they are now acquainted, but it is not for him. He did not run them. He did not even create the page for the cafe. Ji-hee sighed. Maybe the cook was right, she should delete hers too. The blonde stopped her, no need. He hadn't looked at all her photos yet. She continued. It pissed her off that exes were visiting the page, but it was easy enough to just block them after a breakup. Yumin continued to drink wine in silence. The cook did the same. They listened to their friends' reasoning about their ex's rash actions. Why be active after a breakup? It's very good if they come to their senses later. The cook listened, drinking. Familiar. Tegan told how his ex told him that he continued to miss her and suffer. It was not true, he was offended. Yumin said that perhaps it was her state of mind. She just still loved. But because of her pride, she couldn't admit it. Hoen thought about it. It seemed he was beginning to understand his ex's actions. They were all just a bluff. She couldn't be honest even after the breakup. Suddenly, he became very gloomy in his thoughts. Yumin noticed it, but she couldn't understand what was happening to him. Suddenly, she became curious and asked Ji-hee if her exes had contacted her after some time. She began to hope. A friend confirmed that it happened. Sometimes immediately, sometimes after a week or even 3 months. Yumin grabbed at it like a straw, but most of them still understood that it was all over. They didn't contact each other anymore. The girl was dejected. Hope faded again. Suddenly, Ji-hee announced that she knew a way to make exes right. You just need to show them how happy you are with the other person. The boys changed their clothes. Everyone went outside with the intention of returning home. The girls thanked for the dinner. They promised to bring friends next time. Tegan called his friend, interrupting the farewell conversation. Their taxi had already arrived. It was time to head home. But she was worried about Yumin, who hadn't arrived yet. Ji-hee started the conversation with the guy well, and her friend didn't want to interfere and delay. She assured that she would catch her own so that she would go. Hendo promised to take care of her, and he also sent his friends home, although he had to walk home. The car drove away. They were left alone. The cook suggested that Yumin go to the main road and catch a car there. She agreed. They walked in silence. The girl followed the boy. They felt awkward being alone together. The whole way Yumin thought about her ex, about how he was doing. I wonder what his reaction would be if he saw her with someone else. But then he didn't express any emotions, despite how she dumped him. Apparently he really didn't feel anything anymore. She looked at the time. It was already late. Suddenly another couple was walking nearby. He asked his companion how she was, if everything was okay. The girl's voice answered that everything was fine. Most likely she was nervous. It was her first corporate party. Besides, she had been acting stupid because of the alcohol. It wasn't right. Now she was embarrassed. The guy had assured her that there was no need to worry about it. Yumin shuddered when she realized who it was. She couldn't believe her eyes. It was her ex. It was unexpected to see him now. She remembered how 13 years ago, she saw him for the first time. It was at school. Then all the girls were looking at the new student. The younger girls especially admired him. For them, he was a new guy, a prospect they would like. The girls would gather in a group and discuss him. Ji-hee and Yumin were already among the senior girls. They could not understand who was causing all the fuss. One day they also became curious and approached such a group of girls. Yumin saw him. It was not for nothing that they said he was handsome. They talked about him as if he was some teacher's son. But that didn't bother her much at the time. He looked in her direction. He only had to smile and the girl was speechless. She had been enchanted by him at first sight. Now she shuddered from what she heard and saw. It really was Kim Il-sung. He was not walking down the street alone. He could see her. The girl was confused. She seemed to want to see him, but apparently not now. At the moment, she was not ready for this meeting. She was scared. She didn't want him to see or talk. But at that moment, there was nowhere to hide. And then her gaze fell on Hoen. A thought popped into her head. Well, it wasn't that she had nowhere to go. It was a crazy thought. She just looked at the guy next to her. She had to do something. Panic seized her. She needed to find shelter somewhere, and very quickly. She ran up to Hoen and grabbed him by the hem of his jacket. In an instant, she hugged him. She buried her nose in his chest. Hiding inside the jacket from prying eyes, she hoped to be unnoticed and unrecognized. The guy was shocked. He couldn't understand what was happening. Why such actions all of a sudden? He was trying to get out of it when a couple passed by, but those passing by noticed them. The girl found the embraces of these beautiful people sweet. She drew her companion's attention to them. "Because they are such a sweet couple," the girl said. She thought it was just a warm hug, not knowing what it really was. The man agreed and asked to go further quickly. He needed to go home, and he did not want to disturb these young people. Hoen wanted it to end quickly. He asked to let him go. The girl, clinging, whispered to wait a little, just 3 minutes and she would go away. He started to get angry. She buried her face in his clothes. It was too close and incomprehensible for him. The girl apologized and asked him to be quiet for a bit. Despite the whispers between them, Yumin continued to listen to the people passing by. And here was the question she had been waiting for. Did he have a girlfriend? He confirmed. The companion said that she thought so. She was feeling better already. The couple, chatting so peacefully, passed by. They turned the corner and were no longer visible. Yumin emerged from her friend's clothes. He exhaled. He hoped that was all. And she would move away from him. I just wanted to ask her to let go of the jacket. As the hands grabbed even tighter, the girl began a sincere story about why she did it. They had been dating for 6 years. Yumin was shaking all over. The guy felt something was wrong. The evening promised not to end so quickly and easily. He was overcome by a bad feeling. She continued crying. She couldn't understand how he had started a new relationship after 3 months. Hoen put his hand to his face. That was the last thing he needed. The evening continued at the bar. Yumin drank bottle after bottle. She needed to talk. Yes, she was harsh at the moment of separation, but there was a reason for that. Could he really have forgotten about 6 years together so easily, she wondered. Hoen sat on a chair and listened silently. He was already quite tired and wanted to go home. That is, she hugged him only because she saw her ex-boyfriend. He was perplexed. He could not understand why she did it. Yumin felt uncomfortable. She apologized. It's just that at that moment she had nowhere else to hide except in the arms. She lowered her eyes in embarrassment. Hoen asked. But why? Because she was not guilty of anything and there was no need to hide. The girl herself did not know why she did it. She thought. After all, before this, she had thought more than once how she would meet her ex. What he would ask. How he would react to the fact that she was happy. And then she just took and hid. Now she was looking out the bar window and thinking. Perhaps she was afraid that she would understand about the remaining feelings in Ison. She did not understand her actions. It was just her subconscious that forced her to hide. Hoen interrupted her thoughts. She didn't have to hide, he said. She could have looked her in the eye and just said hello. At that moment, Ison would have thought that she had a new boyfriend, that she was in a new, happy relationship, in a new embrace. And then Yumin realized how she hadn't thought of this before. She was standing next to the guy, and she couldn't figure it out. Now she was angry with herself. Well, how could she not have thought of it? After all, such a chance to cross paths doesn't happen often. And she doesn't have a boyfriend. And today there was a guy standing next to her. And she was so confused. Hoen wanted to go home, which he quickly said. He asked to quickly clean up and leave, and turned to the door. The girl apologized and agreed. Yumin felt ashamed. She looked at the empty bottles. Not only did she drink a lot, but she also made her listen to her, causing so much trouble. They went outside. The guy walked calmly in his direction. The girlfriend was quite shaky from the amount of alcohol she had drunk, and she also started looking. If only she wouldn't throw up. The girl looked at her fellow traveler and she couldn't understand. Either he was kind or indifferent. She had no idea what kind of person he was. Back then, around the corner, he seemed too cruel. But today, he calmly tolerated her outburst. Yumin stopped. She thought. She needed to create an opportunity to meet her ex, but there needed to be another guy nearby. And then she looked at her companion. It dawned on her. Suddenly, she asked if he was seeing someone. He kept walking. After all, they could see each other sometimes, not far from here. She would treat him. It wasn't flirting, she needed help. The guy looked back and was very surprised by the offer. Yumin asked him to pretend that they were dating. Just like that. There are no guys in her circle right now with whom she could start a relationship. And she didn't want to right now. And there was no one else to voice such a request to. Continuing her speech, Yumin didn't even notice that the guy had already walked away. She raised her head. He probably didn't hear her. She was upset. Her head suddenly started spinning. She shouldn't have drunk so much. The girl sat down to keep from falling. However, that didn't help much either. Yumin hugged her knees and continued to sit like that. She hadn't felt this bad in a long time. And it wasn't just the alcohol. Hun asked her to get up. But it was no use. As if she hadn't heard. He said that he would go alone then. Let her sit. Yumin with her face buried in her knees. Somewhere far away she heard footsteps separating. He was leaving. She didn't care. Hoen had already gone some distance. But suddenly a crazy thought came into his head. He turned around abruptly and returned to the girl sitting on the path. The guy came right up to Yumin. Standing in front of her, he asked what she could offer in return. She raised her head, looking at her with an unhappy look. Slowly she tried to get up. Maybe he needs money. But no, he has enough money. Hoen raised his head. He saw an advertising banner with his ex on it. He decided that he was using this girl too. 5 years ago, this man, inspired by love, cleaned his apartment, vacuumed, washed. From early morning, he was busy with household chores. The washed laundry was already hanging on the drying rack. He was glad that his beloved's clothes were hanging next to his t-shirts. He adored this flowered dress. Hoen happily cooked breakfast, cut vegetables, stewed and boiled. He didn't think it was shameful. Besides, it was his profession. He loved cooking. The table was set. There were many beautiful dishes, and probably very tasty. He tried. Pleased with himself, he went to the bedroom. He quietly opened the door and approached the bed. The one for whom this morning had come was sleeping there. He loved to do something nice, to please and see a smile. Sitting down next to her, Hoen took her hand in his. She reached for his cheek. Woke up. It was nice that he was busy like a hostess in the morning. The girl had a sleepy, disheveled look. Her hair was uncombed, scattered on the pillow. Sleepy eyes. At that moment she was insanely charming. She held out her hands to him and whispered that she forbade him to do this to anyone else. He belonged to her. She didn't want him to try for anyone else. Pretending to be hungry, Hoen bit the girl's tender finger slightly. He played like a child. Expressions of love are like that. Tenderness and childishness. The girl laughed. He was charming. Saying that she was getting up, she tried to get up. He loved this way of starting the day. Seeing her next to him. He was happy. Yumin crawled to work. It was hard to say that she had come. She could hardly think straight. Her friend looked at her, not understanding what was happening. The girl lay down right on the table. It felt like she was dying. The alcohol she had drunk yesterday was making itself felt. How stupid it had been. Ji-hee offered her some medicine. Maybe it would help. Especially since the girl hadn't even had lunch. But nothing would go down her throat right now. The nausea was terribly painful. She held her head and lamented. She shouldn't have mixed the alcohol yesterday. It was a huge mistake. And it all started with wine. Ji-hee noticed this moment. After all, they were only drinking wine. So her friend was somewhere else. Yumin realized that she had let it slip at that moment. The friend looked at her, waiting for the story. She sat quietly, not expressing much emotion. Yumin did not want to lie, but she was ashamed to tell the truth. The colleagues overheard the conversation and decided to ask questions. The girl was already feeling bad. She was holding her head and didn't want to tell the whole truth now. The girls pounced on their friends with questions. They realized that they had been drinking with men the day before. And now they wanted to hear the details. Ji-hee reminded them that she was the boss now, not a friend. The girls laughed that there was no need to discuss personal matters in front of them. Now they were interested. Ji-hee asked to pretend that they had not heard anything. A message came to the phone. It was Yumin's phone. She took it and started reading. She didn't expect this message. She felt ashamed of yesterday. The message was from Hoen. He wanted to meet when the girl was free. The brunette understood why, but she doubted it. In half an hour, she was going to meet a guy. She was afraid of this meeting, but at the same time, she was looking forward to it. She needed to somehow compensate for yesterday evening. When she got to the cafe, she didn't see the guy anywhere. Strange. After all, he had already told her on the spot. She looked around, searching for a familiar face. And then Yumin saw Milouette at a table at the end of the hall. She was surprised. There were many free seats in the cafe and he took a seat in a dark corner. The guy was noticeably nervous. He sat dejectedly, and his legs were nervously tapping and holding. Apparently, Yumin wasn't the only one who was worried about this meeting. He looked at the table and wrung his hands. Apparently, he was preparing a speech in his head. He didn't know how to start the conversation and how to say what he wanted. Yumin walked up to him and called his name. He turned around abruptly. It seemed like he hadn't expected her and was scared. Although that wasn't the case. The girl asked again how long he had to wait for her. Hoen exhaled. He said that not very long and collected his thoughts. The guy suddenly jumped up, telling Yumin to sit down. To ease the awkwardness, he decided to go order something to drink. But without even waiting or asking what she wanted, Hoen ran off to the bar. The girl was surprised. She was cut off mid-sentence. She felt bad now. She definitely didn't want coffee. Well, he didn't ask her what she wanted anyway, so she'll have to accept it. Hoen returned rather quickly. He brought warm tea. Just tea, the girl was surprised. Oh well. She thanked him. Yumin really wanted to apologize for her behavior yesterday. She was just very drunk, so she made him a little nervous. She hoped that he got home safely. The guy drank tea in silence. They both recalled yesterday's farewell moment. Yumin demanded that the guy keep his promise to help her. He tried hard to push her into a taxi. The girl remembered that she was talking nonsense. Alcohol was affecting her. That's why she asked not to pay attention to it. Hoen looked at her seriously and put the cup on the table. And suddenly he said something she hadn't expected. The handsome man suggested doing what they had talked about. They needed to pretend that they were dating. Yumin was very surprised. She asked again if he was really serious about this. She did not expect this outcome of the conversation. She thought that he was playing along with her when she was drunk. And now, like her, he wanted to forget everything. Pretending to be a couple isn't that hard, really. Hoen reminded her that he also said that he wanted to use her. Apparently she forgot about it since yesterday, and he forgot her name and called her Yuna. The girl drank tea. She thought and remembered. It turns out that in the evening he was sincere with her. She did not expect such a turn of events. Having collected her thoughts, she said, since he agreed, then it was probably worth discussing all the points of her plan. And everything had to be decided. She wanted her ex to see how happy she was with another man. Since he lived next to the cafe, they would need to spend time there together from time to time. It's not a difficult task. You just need to walk, go to a cafe, have lunch. The main task is for them to be seen together. The meeting time had to be agreed upon in advance. Yumin's plan was something like an escape from reality, creating an illusion. The girl couldn't admit even to herself that she wasn't loved. Even though she had abandoned him, she still hoped to see regret in Isen's eyes. Hendo didn't ask any questions. It seemed that everything would suit him. He wasn't interested in the circumstances or the details of the plan of action. After listening to her to the end, he exhaled and said that now it was his turn to speak. After all, he had his own conditions and his own plan. Now he called her Yujin. After each meeting he would take photos. The girl would not necessarily be in the photo completely. The main thing was to show her presence. These photos will be on his social media page. He will create it specifically for this. Yumin listened attentively to the guy, delving into every moment. She asked again. Nothing more was required of her, surprisingly. The guy didn't need her to do anything else. Hoen wanted the girl's presence in his life to hurt his former love. He had high hopes for this. Only then could he find out what it really meant. Yumin drank tea and tried to put everything in order in her head. The guy wanted to create an account that didn't exist before, to take pictures of the girl. Apparently he, just like her, wanted to hook the feelings of his ex by showing another. Probably it was the girl he was talking to on the street. But he had abandoned her so cruelly, why stir up old feelings now? Although Yumin understood that she had done the same. They were similar. I wonder how his story began. Hoen suggested meeting on Sundays. He has a day off on those days. Or in the evenings on other days. He spoke and could not make out the look in the girl's eyes. Suddenly he asked how long this would have to be done. But Yumin initially didn't know when it was time to stop. Most likely until they both get what they want. The guy looked at her indifferently and coldly. He agreed with everything. But it was a joke. Yumin suggested starting in 2 months and then we'll see. The guy agreed. It was worth trying for a start. After finishing their conversation, they left the cafe. They decided to start their scam on Sunday. Yumin will send all the details in a message. The girl called out to the boy. She knew she had left a bad impression. That was what Hoen thought. But now she wanted to apologize and was glad that he accepted her stupid offer. She hoped that they would work together in the end. The brunette looked at the girl. She was beautiful when she smiled. He hadn't noticed it before. He smiled back. So-chan must find out about this girl soon, he thought. And they shook hands, sealing their agreement. A young blonde man was sitting at a table in his cafe. It was a break. He was listening to music on his phone. He liked his playlist. He must have fallen in love. He looked through yesterday's messages for the 10th time. His communication with Ji-hee was growing. He wanted more. The boy thought about every word he wrote. He was afraid of ruining the impression of himself. He probably behaved like a child. The girl was a little older. He was very worried about this. He was afraid of getting into trouble. And he was angry with himself that he could have said something wrong. Hoen approached him. He came to work and saw his friend. The blonde screamed in surprise and hid the phone with the correspondence. The cafe was still closed, but the guys decided that they needed to clean up. And they also needed to discuss the menu, so that the guests would like it. Besides working together, the guys were friends. Besides, Taegun was curious. He decided to ask his friend, who seemed to have a girlfriend, because recently he started to behave strangely. He constantly wanders somewhere, disappears, often talks on the phone, and he goes out so that no one can hear, after all, he guessed. And all because he himself was like that. Now a message came from Ji-hee and he smiled. And then he saw his friend's new page. Hoen followed him. It was unexpected. After all, he had never created his own Instagram page before. And he was generally against all this. Taegun grabbed him by the shoulder. So he was right. Maybe it really was because of the girl. She was the one who influenced him. And he couldn't do it before. The friend bombarded Hoen with questions. He was interested in everything. Who she was and how long she had been there. And he wouldn't mind seeing her photo. Tired of his annoying friend, Hoen reached his apartment in the evening. He slowly entered the empty and dark house. All the million questions of Tegan were ringing in his head. It was amazing how he managed to get out of it. He decided for himself that even under threat of death he would not tell that he had met with So-chan. He felt neither his arms nor his legs. His head was buzzing. Tired, he fell onto the sofa. He didn't want to do anything. He only reached for the remote control and turned on the TV. There was a movie on TV, and his ex was playing there. She was everywhere. How can you forget when her face is everywhere? On every corner. Suddenly the phone vibrated. A message arrived. It was from Yumin. Right, tomorrow is Sunday. She suggested starting tomorrow. He thought about it. After all, he wanted to implement this plan himself. And there was no reason to delay now. The sooner they started, the sooner the result would be. Hearing her voice on TV, it seemed to him that she was talking to him about what she loves and hates at the same time. His fingers trembled with their conflicting feelings, but he had to act, and he wrote back with agreement. By a strange coincidence, Yumin watched the same movie, but their feelings were different. The plot is strange, although the actors play well. For her, everything is banal. The answer was not long in coming, and she thought that Hendo was sleeping. It became interesting. She was very worried. But the guy agreed. The girl looked at her phone and couldn't believe it. A bunch of thoughts started to bubble in her head. She was thinking about what to wear. After all, she needed to look like a real couple. The next day she was standing at the appointed place at the appointed time. She tried, she prepared, and she looked the part for the date. It was strange that he hadn't come yet. It was already time. She was overcome with excitement. It wasn't really a date. But she couldn't wait for everything to work out. She looked around but didn't see the guy anywhere. She thought she'd wait a little longer and write to him. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Suddenly someone spoke behind her. She screamed in surprise. It seemed he was laughing at her and deliberately mangling her name. Having calmed down, Yumin realized that he had arrived earlier. Then she suggested that they take a walk and go to a restaurant, as they had planned earlier. You can just walk towards the cafe. But there were so many people on the street. Very noisy and a lot of traffic. He had a sense of déjà vu. Once he had followed So-chan in the same way. She had yelled at him, chased him away. How painful it had been. He grabbed his face with his hand. He wanted to push away these terrible memories. He would definitely survive this. Yumin couldn't understand what was wrong with him. She said that they wouldn't just be walking here for no reason, although she had already explained it. but she repeated it. This is the most popular place for a date. So if the ex is out walking, they will definitely meet. And that's exactly what was needed. Things didn't work out today. They were walking but hadn't met anyone yet. Hoen suggested they walk some more. The girl was a little downcast, but she decided that everything would work out. There were really a lot of couples on this street. A lot of dates. It seemed like there was this romance and love in the air. They were a gray spot in this pink mass of love. They played a couple, but you couldn't see them. They walked like strangers to each other. Yumin's mood became even more dejected. She didn't feel comfortable. He wasn't close. The girl didn't even know what to talk about. Once upon a time, she and her ex had walked here too. And everything was different. It was easy, it was fun. Everything felt completely different. Lost in thought, Yumin didn't notice the stone under her feet. And she tripped. Suddenly, she started to fall. Hoen saw this and reflexively wanted to catch her. But it happened so awkwardly that he grabbed her face with his hand. It seemed like everyone turned away from their conversations and turned to them. People were watching them. They were scared for the girl and her clumsiness. They had attracted attention. People stood and watched, but no one helped. Hoen did it wrong and ended up hitting her in the face, but he wanted to catch her so she wouldn't fall. They walked down the street and reached the cafe where they planned to sit. They were met by a friendly waitress, who wanted to show them to a table. They replied that there would be only 2 of them. Yumin was uncomfortable with her appearance. A red palm print remained on her face. She said she needed to go to the toilet. The guy apologized a lot. He felt very uncomfortable about what he had done. But it wasn't worth it. It wasn't his fault. Anyway, he kept apologizing the whole way. He shouldn't have grabbed her face. But Yumin knew he really wanted to help her. The girl couldn't stand it any longer and turned around and said that everything was really okay. She understood everything. But he was still ashamed, especially about the imprint. The phone on the table rang. It was a bright, bright apartment. Lots of sunlight, big flowers. The screen said that my sister was calling. A handsome guy answered the phone. It was Yumin's ex. His sister asked him what he was doing. He was just cleaning the apartment. She asked if he was going home. But they didn't let him go home and they didn't expect him. While talking, he continued cleaning. His sister reminded him that his father wouldn't let him come back until he made peace with Yumin. Well, what could he do? It was what it was. So they'll have to meet their sister somewhere on the street. By the way, maybe she should bring her father with her one day. Hoen took one of the seats in the cafe. He was waiting for the girl from the toilet. He felt awkward in front of her. He looked gloomy. People were chatting and making noise around him. The atmosphere was noisy. Suddenly, he heard the characteristic sound of a camera on his phone. He got scared. The association worked. He looked around. At the next table sat the girlfriends. They were taking pictures of each other. The guy didn't know them. Hoen exhaled. He wanted to meet Soshin, but not now and not here. It would be very unexpected. He would do well to relax. Yumin stared at herself in the mirror. The red handprint was on her face. She wondered what to do about it now. She needed to tidy herself up. She rummaged in her bag and pulled out some powder. Maybe it would help a little. After all, he hadn't grabbed her face on purpose. He had automatically wanted to grab her, to help. In fact, it was her own fault. She wasn't watching her own thoughts. That's why she got cocky and almost fell to the floor. Yumin exhaled and put the powder back in her bag. She couldn't be angry at someone who wanted to help unconditionally. She needed to pull herself together and go out to people. Suddenly she panicked. What if Kim Il-sung was among the people? That was the last thing she needed. He could see everything. This would be the worst possible moment. She gathered her will into a fist and left the toilet. She couldn't sit there all the time. Well, it seemed like the imprint had disappeared a little and the powder had helped. The girl went out into the hall and looked around. She had a feeling of déjà vu. Hoen was sitting in the darkest place of the hall again. It was strange that he sat there. Yumin looked around. There were plenty of seats by the windows. He apparently had a favorite spot somewhere in the corner and in the dark. The girl approached the table where Hoen was sitting. She pulled out a chair to sit down. She asked again if he had to wait long. The waitress came to take their order. They were ready. They were already quite hungry from their walk. Waiting for their order, they sat silently. Unlike the people around them, they were different from the couples around them. Somehow they felt the tension between themselves. Hoen called for silence. He decided to ask if the girl's face hurt and if there were any bruises. His conscience tormented him. Yumin said that it doesn't hurt, and asked, pointing to her face, if anything else is visible. The guy asked that if it hurts later, be sure to tell him. The girl asked again if he had already made a page on Instagram. She wanted to know his nickname so she could subscribe. And then she started surfing to find it. It was very interesting. It turned out he hadn't even uploaded an avatar. But that way his ex wouldn't find him. She wouldn't understand that the page was his. The guy insisted that she would understand anyway. Yumin offered to take a photo for his avatar since he didn't have one. She had already turned on the camera, but the guy stopped her on impulse. The girl did not insist. She had realized his dislike of the camera. She apologized and lowered the camera. She would not force him. They brought their order. Everything looked very appetizing. The guys thanked them and wanted to start eating. Hoen asked to wait. The girl remembered that he needed to take a photo to confirm the date with the girl. Now was the right moment. She moved a little so that the photo would look harmonious. You could see the girl next to her and the wonderful dinner. The guy took the photo. He showed Yumin the result right away. He wanted to approve the shot he wanted to post on the page. She confirmed. Everything is fine. Her face is not on it. She looked at the photo more closely. She said that of course it could be posted. It really looked like a real date. For a while they just sat there in silence. They just ate quietly. Each of them was thinking about their own things. There wasn't much to talk about. While eating, Yumin looked around and saw people chatting happily around. They stood out again. She suddenly realized it. Suddenly, she called the guy and asked him to tell her something. He couldn't understand what she wanted and why she was doing it. They were already sitting and spending time together just like they had agreed. It was just that their table looked really boring compared to everyone else's. All you had to do was look around. After all, people don't behave like that on a date. The girl didn't look happy. That was the whole point. They looked like two people having lunch together. People look different in new relationships. Hoen was a little confused. She looked worried, but not in love and happy. There was nothing to say in response to her arguments. She decided she would start first. The guy just needed something to talk to her about, and she would definitely pretend to be happy. Just pretend. It was unclear why they were trying so hard. No one would notice them in all that noise, and their exes weren't around right now. But he decided to play along. Say something. Hoen decided to talk about what happened yesterday. He was a little nervous. He tapped his fingers on the table. Yumin immediately switched over. She added all her charm. She pretended to be pleased. With the look of a madly happy woman in love, she asked again what happened yesterday. Hoen reminded her that she wanted to show her ex how happy she was with her new man. That was true, she agreed. The girl started to smile very brightly. She must have looked very pathetic yesterday and laughed sincerely. I wonder what kind of reaction she expected from her ex. She probably wants him to break up with his new girlfriend and come back to her, Hoen wondered, so that they could be the happy couple they were at first. Continuing to smile at the audience, Yumin said that she probably hoped for that. And if not, then at least he realized and regretted that he treated her that way. The guy thought about it, but she was honest with him and with herself. The comparison and the realization made him angry. He clenched his fist. Yumin took a sip of water and asked if he didn't want to get back together with his ex. Although what was the point of asking if it was obvious anyway? Suddenly he asked a question that caught her off guard. What if her ex doesn't contact her in 2 months? She looked at him in surprise and fear. The self-confident Hoen wanted to hurt her pride. What if the ex doesn't get in touch, even if he sees her with a new guy? After all, the plan didn't provide for any options. Yumin fell silent. She really hadn't thought about the possible outcomes. Nothing might have happened. She silently put the glass down on the table. Apparently there is no point in trying too hard, the guy said. No one will see or appreciate it. And perhaps everything they do is in vain. The girl became noticeably sad. The smile no longer adorned her sweet face. She looked at the table. The conversation stopped again. The dinner was over and so were the conversations. The couple stood up and got ready to go home. The same administrator was standing at the reception. She thanked them for visiting and invited them to come again. So simply and coldly, the guy and the girl had dinner. They went outside and nodded goodbye to each other. Both went in different directions. Hoen got on the bus. Looking out the window, he saw the girl who had just sat at the same table with him. She was beautiful, but now she was very sad. But while he was there, she tried not to show it. And it seemed like he didn't encourage her to show what she felt. At some point, he must have gotten angry. After all, she was so much like her. She bragged about the last straw. And that was disgusting. Hoen stomped off the bus to his house. It was already dark outside. There were practically no people. The streets were empty. Suddenly he heard meowing somewhere nearby. A guy was squatting on the path. He came back and their eyes met. Kittens were running around the guy. He was playing with them and stroking them. The guys didn't know each other before. Now they met. It seemed they had something in common. The guy stood up. It turned out he knew that Hoen lived in this house. They were neighbors, they just lived on different floors. But Hoen had never seen him before. And he didn't know who he was. He's just not particularly vigilant and not very attentive to the people around him. The cat was trying to get underfoot. She didn't like it much that no one was paying attention to her. This guy lives on the 4th floor. It's strange how Hoen couldn't notice. After all, they lived very close. This guy lived in the apartment below only. The brown-haired man smiled. He had noticed the neighbor because he had moved in a month ago and settled above him. He remembered people well. A month ago, his sister came to visit him. She pestered him with questions about why he broke up with his girlfriend. They went outside. She continued to pursue him. 4 months had already passed. He did not want to tell her anything. To get rid of her, he said that he was going to a meeting. If she needed, he could give his sister a lift home. If she wanted. He offered at the end. She got her fill of her questions. The girl got furious. What kind of meeting could there be? So he left Yumin for another, she asked, shouting. Yes, it was Kim Il-sung. He was just going to hang out with his friends. All of his friends were guys. He exhaled, tired of the pressure and the questions. She followed him and continued to mumble. Kim still did not tell him the reason for the breakup, so they went down in the elevator. There was a truck parked at the entrance. The movers were running around with boxes. Someone new had moved into their house, a new neighbor. The movers asked the guy which floor they needed to carry these things to. To apartment 502, the new tenant specified. Hoen was just moving in then. That was the first time Kim saw him. And to his regret, he never managed to meet him again. Although he had wanted to meet him for a long time. It just never worked out. And now in the evening, thanks to this cat, I was lucky to say hello. Hoen was also glad to meet me. At that time, he still didn't know who he was meeting. Suddenly, they both heard a rustling sound and movement. They looked at each other and looked back and saw 2 kittens. Apparently, they had been somewhere nearby before. Now they were walking importantly near the cat, stretching, rubbing their paws. The cat had apparently learned to trust people, but the kittens had not. Kim asked the new neighbor, maybe he doesn't like cats. But no, the guy adored them. He could never pass by calmly. It turns out that this area is very friendly to cats, so he will have to see them very often. The neighbor warned him. Hoen closed his eyes in satisfaction. It was too good to be true. I didn't think the truth could be so good. The elevator's ringing interrupted his thoughts. Kim reached his 4th floor, and saying that it was nice to meet you, he went out to his apartment. Hoen smiled. Said see you soon. He was pleased. Hospitable new neighbors, a cat family living nearby, just amazing. A quick move and so convenient. Yumin was sitting at home freaking out. Scrolling down to Hoen's page, she saw a photo. It was some kind of absurdity. There was no limit to her indignation. He told her all sorts of things about how she had made things up and wanted something. Although he himself posted the photo from the cafe and started his own page. She drank the drink thinking why. For some reason he told her not to overdo it, because it seems like such things can't affect a person. She knows it all and she knows it. But she can't just throw it all away. She's already reached for the 2nd can of drink. She knew very well that it was difficult for a person to change their mind. Yumin understood that this plan was certainly doomed to failure, but she had to try. She buried her face in her hands. Her head was bursting with thoughts. She was stubborn in her decisions. Once she started, she would continue, even if it didn't work out. At this time in the evening park, Taegyun was sitting on a bench waiting. He was scrolling through his Instagram feed. His surprise knew no bounds. He saw Hyun's page. So he was right and he got himself a girlfriend. You can see everything in the new photo. And he kept denying it. He liked it. Now he knew that his friend had a date, and he would be watching all of this for the first time. While he was looking at this, he didn't notice his girlfriend approaching. It was a date. He would look at the photos later. The girl laughed that he could be heard from far away. It became interesting what he was shouting. What could have happened? He just saw something on social networks. Everything is fine. He was very impatient to blab to her, to tell her everything. But first he needed to discuss it with Kren. He was looking forward to this conversation with his friend. The next day, Yumin was at a business meeting. Two representatives of fashion stores were discussing the presentation of spring new products. They planned to do it at the same time. The business conversation went well. The issues were resolved. As soon as the new presentation schedule is decided, the colleague will definitely notify. She still had to go to the office. Although she would have been happy to go home already. A lot had already been done during the day and she was pretty tired. Passing by standing people, they heard whispers. The girls were planning to go somewhere after work. They wanted to see someone. The conversation was about famous people. The colleagues also became interested. The partner asked what was going on and where they were planning. It turned out that a drama was being filmed nearby, with famous actors in the lead roles. These actors were Hong Chan and Seo Keon. Everyone knew them. No one suspected that this actress was Hoen's former love. Yumin, like many others, was a fan of this actress. She admired her acting and appearance, and this news also delighted her. It was a chance to see a star. They also went to the shooting location. A lot of people gathered. Everyone wanted to see their favorite actors. The studio workers asked to keep quiet because they were filming. Yumin stood behind. It was hard to see, but she hoped to get lucky. No one expected to see these two actors together on the set. There had been a scandal between them recently. In the distance, we managed to see Sochun. She was talking to the director. As always, he praised her for her excellent acting and inspired her to continue like that. Uya smiled modestly. Yumin admired the actress. In life, she looked even more beautiful than on the screen. And Nova's hairstyle with longer hair did not spoil her. It suited her. Although it was far away, I managed to see her. The girl was happy. It's not often that you get such a chance. The actress's new stylist ran by. The girl recognized Yumin and ran up to say hello. It turned out they knew each other. The meeting was unexpected and pleasant. Both were happy to see each other. Yumin thought that her friend had also come just to watch. But she said that it was not quite so, and that what she was going to tell her would simply shock her. But Hagen was running on an errand, so she couldn't linger too long. She grabbed her friend by the hand and pulled her along. On the way, all the stories. They walked and chatted nicely. They hadn't seen each other or talked for a long time. There was no opportunity or time. Each was busy with her own affairs. They walked hand in hand, talking. Sokun was on her break. She was sitting on her chair drinking coffee. Being dissatisfied, she asked her assistant where Hagen, her assistant, had gone. It turned out she hadn't been sent on an errand. The actress asked me to tell her to come back quickly. She had important questions for this girl. They needed to talk. It turns out that Hagen works as a stylist for a famous actress. She really surprised and shocked her friend with this. She congratulated her and was very happy about her success. A friend promised Yumin to get an autograph from the star. True, a little later when she becomes in good standing. It was inconvenient for her to do this right away when she came. The girl grew up quickly, and professionally too. So quickly, Yumin noted. Her friend laughed that her brother said the same thing. It was Yumin's ex-boyfriend's sister. It dawned on her that she had gone too far by mentioning her brother. But they reassured her that everything was fine. Ison must be happy too that his sister got a job. Especially such a prestigious one. Yumin smiled as she said this. She remembered that they were running on an errand. The girl sent Hogan on so that she wouldn't have any problems. She couldn't be kept for long. She was right. Now was not the time for long conversations. Hogan ran away, promising to call in a few days and have a normal conversation. Yumin was left standing in the middle of the street, alone, and full of thoughts, thinking about what to do next. Go home, go to work, or watch more filming. The set was like an anthill. Lots of people. Workers were solving problems. Onlookers were watching and whispering among themselves. There was noise and hubbub all around. Hogan rushed to the actress as quickly as possible. They were supposedly looking for her. It turns out they simply noticed her absence. Nothing critical or urgent happened. Seokon was in a good mood. She heard that the manager had sent the girl on an errand. She was surprised that she had returned so quickly. At the same time, she wanted to find out. The girl met her friend. The actress noticed it. That's why she thought she would be gone longer. Hogan was embarrassed. She didn't think anyone would notice. She apologized. The meeting lasted only a few minutes. The girl was embarrassed. They had not seen each other for a long time and wanted to talk at least a few words. Sochan replied that there was nothing to worry about. She continued to find out. The actress thought that the girls were very happy to see each other. Apparently they are very close. Hogan agreed. She admired her friend since childhood and tried to imitate her. But lately they saw each other so rarely, almost didn't communicate and became distant from each other. That's why the meeting was so warm. Their conversation was interrupted by the manager. He called Hogan to him. The actress let the girl go. If necessary, she would not necessarily call. Sokan stared at the phone again. She heard the manager asking his assistant about the result of his assignment, but she was thinking about her own. She continued her search on her phone. She wanted to know and understand a lot. When she came across Hoen's page, she saw that he only had 4 subscriptions. I wonder who these people are. His new girlfriend will definitely be there. After all, with her appearance, he started a page on a social network. The first on the list was Yumin, that friend of her stylist assistant. When she opened the page, she saw the same dish in the photo that the guy had. Now she understood why he made the page. After all, he understood that she would look at everything and see this girl. At the same time, she is friends with Hagen. A very interesting coincidence, the actress thought. She thought about it. It was strange and interesting. As evening approached, the boys closed the cafe and were getting ready to go home. Hoen was glad that it was such a good working day, but it was time to go home and rest. Taegun called out to him. Curiosity overcame him. He decided to ask what he had planned. Did his friend want to tell him anything? The guy was surprised, as if he didn't understand what he was talking about. Although no, I wanted to say something. Tegan even stamped his feet in anticipation. He couldn't wait to hear the entertaining story of personal relationships. Hoen thanked his friend. The discovery was difficult, took a lot of effort and time, and if it weren't for his friend, nothing would have happened. That's what he wanted to say, but Tegan, initially flattered by the praise, suddenly became angry. Why were they singing these praises to him? Something was wrong here. He wanted to hear something else. He directly demanded that his friend tell him about the girl he was spending time with. He saw a photo on Instagram. But Hoen cooled his ardor, saying that he didn't need to know. Tegan was offended. They had known each other and had been friends for 4 years. All this time his friend had not told him about personal matters. But it is strange that even now, while flaunting it, he still does not share it with him. Hoen walked calmly and resolutely towards the exit. He had no need to share, so he wouldn't. He wanted his friend to come to terms with it. Without stopping at the door, he said that he would not wait and went home. Therefore, Tegan will have to close the cafe himself. Without turning around, he walked home in silence. His friend remained standing in the room, upset and disappointed. He had still been counting on a friendly conversation. Even under the threat of death, Hoen was not ready to tell that he had abandoned a celebrity girl, that he was now trying to get her back. He would not be able to tell that. Hoen was very tired that day, not so much from work but from his comrades' questions, and he understood that he would not stop there. He was very interested in other people's relationships. The phone rang. It was Yumin. I was just thinking about this situation. It was just in time, Hoen sighed. She wanted to meet the next evening. The girl suggested meeting. She knows that he is free after work. It's okay if it doesn't work out. The guy frowned and thought, but now he couldn't refuse even though he didn't really want to. After all, there was a contract. That's why he said he could. He was expecting offers. Yumin said she would send the address of the pub where they would meet. Her ex used to hang out there, so it would be a good chance to run into him. 2 days later, Hoen walked into the agreed-upon pub. He looked simple. A light sweater and black jeans. This style suited him very well. The girl was already there. He saw her behind the bar. It was surprising that she had arrived earlier. She was wearing a pink sweater and light trousers. She was in a good mood. She invited the guy to sit down. She had already ordered drinks and food. She would have to wait a little. Hoen was very serious. He was not very inspired by these meetings. He was surprised why she behaved so easily with him. After all, in fact, they barely knew each other. The guy was surprised how it happened that she was there earlier. It's just that when she doesn't work, she gets free earlier than him. It was worth having a drink to start the conversation. They were brought food. It looked quite appetizing. Yumin recommended trying it. The food here was delicious. Not like in the restaurant, but still. Suddenly, the girl laughed. He looked at her very tensely and suspiciously. They drank a glass each, but it did not help him relax. She asked him to stop looking at her like that with a smile. No one would believe that they were a couple. A man can't look at his girlfriend like she's crazy. The next glass was in use. Was her ex there at that moment that she was behaving like that now? But no, she just believed that you always need to be on guard. Hoen didn't want to change his state. It's her desire to play to the crowd. He's a serious guy and he won't act differently. Maybe she can laugh and talk loudly herself. He glanced at the girl from under his eyebrow. Let her not expect such behavior from him. It was not for him. His mood was not happy. No, she doesn't want it that way. It would be great if they played the perfect couple, she suggested, continuing to sip her drink. Hoen got angry. This wasn't what the agreement was originally about. After all, they had agreed to just kill time together. But that doesn't mean he has to keep quiet all the time, as if he had water in his mouth. She muttered and drank another glass. She put the glass on the table. After all, you can spend time with someone he knows, as if he is not alone but with another whom he has known for a long time. After all, it's not at all difficult to behave easily and naturally. Empty chatter, habitual reactions to conversation. After all, it's not at all difficult. If he behaved like that, she wouldn't have to pretend to be happy like she did then. It was enough that there was no tension between them. The girl poured another glass. Hoen thought about it. He didn't understand how one could pretend to be happy, and why. You're either happy or you're not. What's the point of these tricks, he thought. I didn't even think that she would be able to play it convincingly. She's not even an actress. It would be obvious that it was fake and artificial. They were sitting at the bar. He turned to her and seemed to be trying to egg her on, to tease her. She wouldn't be able to behave like that so that everyone would believe him. She drank glass after glass, but somehow she didn't get drunk. Apparently she was focused on the conversation. Yumin thought that there was nothing complicated about it as he convinced her. She could try and he could look at it. She challenged Yumin. If she decided to do something, there was no stopping her. She clinked her glass against her glass, and even though she was not an actress, she drank another glass of alcohol in one gulp. Suddenly angry, she put it on the table. Stubborn girl. And suddenly she realized that maybe she should stop. She didn't understand what she was doing, what she could see. She needed to shut up and not talk nonsense. She realized that he was simply provoking her, and she had fallen for it. Swallowing nervously, she thought, what should she do now? She had to get out of this. But she asked, she has nothing to lose. She needs to show what an actress is. Let him know what she is capable of. And she smiled again. Whatever this guy thinks, she will show that she is very serious about her plan. If she decides on something, she will act on it. Hoen continued to drink silently next to him. Well, Yumin thought, from now on she loves this man. The main thing is to think that it is so. That's right. She watched his every move. He did everything silently. He drank, then looked around. Why not? He was handsome. It wouldn't be hard to play. Hoen looked around. There were many people here. There were also couples in love. And they were beaming with happiness, as befits lovers. Surprisingly, no one has ever considered me a happy person. He thought, no one has ever seen such a thing in him. It's just that he probably got used to hiding the fact that he was in a relationship. For many years they hadn't lived in love openly. He was closed. That's why he didn't know how. Suddenly, Yumin leaned towards him and asked what he was thinking about. It was sudden and unexpected. She interrupted his thoughts and scared him. He even shuddered. Her gaze changed. She looked different suddenly. Hoen said that there was no point in acting and pretending to be in love. She pretended that she didn't understand what he was talking about. Touching his shoulder, she suddenly laughed. He looked strange, she said. She didn't understand what he meant. He had made something up. Hendo looked at her with fear. He didn't understand what was happening and why she was behaving like that. And suddenly she began to address him informally. Apparently she started her game. That's what he asked. But Yumin suddenly started spinning and turned her attention to the singer who came out to perform. The guy looked at her and realized that it was probably his own fault. After all, he provoked her from the start. That's how he got the result. And her reaction to this is quite natural. Hoen took out his phone and took a photo of the table to post it on his social network later, as planned. Suddenly, while saving it, he came across a news item. Seo-chun and Sung-chan were smiling sweetly together in a photo. They had acted in a movie together and were now posing for the camera. He looked at his actress and thought, after all, she probably already saw his posts and the new page. But knowing her character, she would not show a reaction so easily. Suddenly Yumin looked at his phone and saw what she was looking at, and she turned on her admiration. After all, it was Hong Seo-jung. How she liked her. The guy jumped in surprise and almost dropped his phone. "He likes this actress too," the girl suddenly asked. "Is that really true?" He panicked. He shook his head and started shouting that he didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. Not a bit. Where did she even get that idea from? If that's not the case, then who is prettier? Suddenly Yumin started to provoke him too. Probably the girl who is sitting with him now. And she smiled so sweetly. "Oh well, she was just joking." Yumin lightly touched him with her hand and said. He looked at her with fear, throwing her hand away, and again called her by another name. She was convincing, he said. But he had to stop, that was enough. He already believed everything. She had accepted the challenge and proved it. Suddenly she looked down and said that she thought she understood why he kept mangling her name. And then she was silent for a second. So because he can't remember it, Hohen thought. But he didn't say it. And he looked at her, waiting for what she would say now. What theory? Exactly, she laughed. He's just embarrassed to call her by name. She laughed. He suddenly jumped up in surprise. If it is not so, then let him call her by her name, the girl demanded. Hohen did it. Repeated. So that's how it is. He could call her correctly from the beginning. She got furious. He sat down on the chair again. Well, is she happy? He asked again. Now maybe she will stop behaving so strangely. Enough. She continued to look at him with a sweet, loving look. Now he was convinced that she could play a lover perfectly. She can make herself look happy very well. Like a real actress. That's why she asked to play along with her and continue to cooperate. After all, she allows herself to be photographed. Hendo looked at her carefully and thought. He had never expected such strange determination and stubbornness from her. He felt a sense of similarity, and also a sense of curiosity. It touched his heart. He took the bottle and poured them another glass. I started thinking, what is she talking about, empty chatter and habitual reactions? It won't be that difficult, in fact. Yes, Yumin agreed. That would be enough. Just so that people would think of them as a couple in love, watching from the side. And she added that if he continues to provoke her and speak mockingly, she will not leave him so easily. She will not sit idly by. And what can she do? Asked Hohen. It became intriguing and interesting. I watched with anticipation of an answer, and was very surprised. Well, it's simple. She'll turn on the flirting to the max and take it all upon herself. She'll call and write. She'll sit at their cafe all the time. And she will flirt with him non-stop just like she did. Well, he didn't like that very much. It was scary, to be honest. Well, she's going to bother him a lot. Isn't that alarming and frightening? He obviously didn't like it. She laughed. If he doesn't believe, then let him try to behave like before. It seems like she's already shown what she's capable of. If she wants, let her take a risk. Hohen smiled back. Well, will he cooperate? The girl asked. Apparently it was worth it to cooperate. The prospects she described were not very encouraging. They clinked their glasses. They were now both smiling. Hohen agreed and said he would try to behave differently. Her strategy had worked. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to meet her ex that evening either, she thought. And she was a little upset. After all, she had been anticipating this moment all along. They went outside. It was time to go home. He had to stay up late with her. The girl apologized for that. No big deal, Hendo said. He called a taxi for her. Yumin was worried about him. In response, she was assured that he was nearby and would just take a walk. It was quiet outside and the weather was beautiful. Suddenly the girl saw a mole on his earlobe. She hadn't noticed it before. It looked very cute. Before, I only envied the mole above his eye. But it turns out he has 2 of them and they are charming. Yumin said this sincerely and laughed. Here comes the taxi. Yumin hurried to get in. It was time to go home. The walk had dragged on until late anyway. She left. Hohen grabbed his earlobe. Rubbed it. What was so charming about them? He couldn't understand her reaction. He was confused. A bright sunny morning came. Washing his face at home, the guy looked carefully in the mirror. This birthmark. It was strange why so much attention was paid to it. He still couldn't understand. He remembered how once 4 years ago Seo-chan also spoke to him about her. That she looked like a mark for an ear piercing. Then he agreed to everything she wanted. Seo-chan suggested getting her ear pierced. He didn't mind if she wanted it so much. She also paid attention to the second mole. She suggested getting an eyebrow piercing. He agreed to that too, if that's what she wanted. She noticed how he agreed to everything, even if she said it as a joke. Touching his hair, she noticed that it had grown a lot. The girl ran her fingers through her hair. Hoen agreed it was high time to get a haircut, to tidy herself up. Soshin chuckled. Or maybe it's not worth it, but on the contrary, it's better to grow it. But the guy didn't understand why, because they would most likely get in the way. She stroked his face. Seochin noticed that he had a very stern look. It wouldn't hurt to cover it with hair. She was gentle then. Maybe sincerely. She said she didn't want the people around him to be afraid of him. He melted before her gaze. Seochan hugged him and pressed herself against him. If possible, it would be better to cover up his severity as much as possible. She wanted to do so. The girls as a group decided to go to a cafe for lunch. By no coincidence, the choice fell on the establishment of some guys they knew. Taegan met them at the door. He was very happy to see the girls, especially Jihee. He smiled and invited them in. Yumin noticed that they hadn't seen each other for a long time and greeted him nicely. She looked different from usual. Simple, boyish, in a cap. He thought it suited her very well. He said that Hen was in the kitchen. As expected, he was preparing delicious dishes. The girls decided not to distract him. They would say hello later. Hun looked back. He saw them. But he didn't change his serious frown. A very businesslike man. He nodded in greeting, purely reserved. Jihee noticed that their cafe was much closer to their work than she had previously thought. The guy smiled and suggested that they come to lunch more often. Tegan invited everyone. And then he winked at them conspiratorially and whispered that he promised them a discount and delicious dishes. The girls liked this offer. Yumin admired the cute couple in front of her. Her friend and the blonde guy looked so cute. They were obviously starting something. It was obvious right away. Jihee couldn't decide what to have for lunch. The guy looked at her with such tenderness. She could drown, and he suggested that she rely on his choice. Not only Yumin noticed this, but also the other girls of the colleague. They began to whisper among themselves about how he looked at Jihee. This guy is young and hot, they noticed. The girl, seeing all this, noted that she had brought them here for dinner, and since they had satisfied their curiosity, it was time to silently accept the food. The girls didn't calm down. Now they were wondering who Yumin's boyfriend was, probably the one who was busy cooking in the kitchen. They laughed. The girl decided against such statements. She began to sharply deny, wave her hands and claim that she had no suitors. Jihee was surprised. She thought they were communicating. Yumin shuddered. She had no reason to communicate with him. They had no common topics or activities to have any connection. She denied it too vehemently. The girl couldn't tell him everything. That she was going on fake dates with him. They wouldn't understand. That's why she would hide and deny everything for as long as possible. It was reassuring that she was confident in Hendo. It was also not in his interest for his friends to find out. He would not blab about it or tell anyone. Jihee said she was sorry. She thought they were a perfect match as a couple. Her friend was very surprised by this statement. She couldn't understand why Hoen suited her so much. His personality and appearance were too far from the type she usually liked. Her boyfriend could be someone other than her favorite type, Jihee noted. They had something in common. The girl thought about her friend's words. Hoen stood in the kitchen, lost in thought. He was working, but where Tegan had disappeared to was unclear. He was there and then suddenly ran off somewhere. Yumin thought that the only thing that really connected them was the inability to forget their past relationships. Apparently, those who didn't know this took it for granted. In any case, you need to continue the game so that your friend doesn't suspect anything and doesn't ask any more unnecessary questions. Suddenly, Yumin laughed and blurted out. If he took the initiative, she might think about it. Of course, she didn't expect that. She knew perfectly well that he would never do that. Suddenly, she heard next to them that their order had been brought. It was a wonderful salad. They put it on the table. The girl hurried to thank Tegan for his service. She looked up, but it was another guy. Unexpected. Hoen glanced at her sideways. Yumin clearly didn't expect to see him here now. Taegun was supposed to be serving. Jihee told him that she and the team had come to them again for lunch, to which they heard a polite answer that they were glad to see them. Yumin was embarrassed. It was too sudden. He must have heard her last words. She was ashamed. She didn't know what to do next. Hoen looked at her sideways and said that he would bring the rest now. He was very calm and reserved, as if he hadn't heard. In her head, she tried to justify herself. After all, she was joking. She was trying to play along with her friend. This was not serious at all. She tried to signal it to him. But did he notice? And now he seemed to grin nastily at her. What a nightmare and shame Yumin felt. The girl's colleagues began to discuss him without any embarrassment. After all, he is the boss here. Besides, he is tall and handsome. They obviously liked him. And he cooks so deliciously. Hoen disappeared after the order. Heard how they wanted to find the cafe's page on social networks. It was necessary to subscribe. Ji-hee promised to share with them. Yumin thought that he probably didn't notice, and he didn't seem to be offended. She hoped so. She sighed with relief. Then they just ate. The girls' group was simultaneously enthusiastically discussing something and chatting loudly. A typical dinner setting. But he heard everything. I noticed how she was bluffing in front of her friends. Her words that he would take the initiative. Surprising. After all, she was the first to show initiative. Even though it was just a game, it nevertheless looked like flirting. He went into the kitchen. Suddenly, the phone in his back pocket rang. It was the sound of an incoming message. He had to see what was there. Unexpectedly, something came for Yumin too. She immediately grabbed the phone. Although her friend noted that she needed to eat, maybe it wasn't that urgent. The cook thought the message was from Yumin, probably because she had just blurted it out. But he realized that it wasn't serious. He took out his phone. He looked at it. He became curious about what was there. He slowly pressed the message icon, where there was one unread message. But it wasn't quite what he expected. What he read shocked him. He reread it several times, taken aback and couldn't believe his eyes. The messages contained a few words. She fainted, felt ill, and was taken to the hospital. She begged me to come to her home. The girls in the hall were brought the remaining dishes. Tegan wished them a pleasant appetite, saying that if he needed anything else, do not hesitate to call him. Everyone appreciated his politeness, courtesy, and excellent attitude. Suddenly, Yumin's phone vibrated, distracting her from her lunch with messages again. It was a message from Ha-kyung. It's very interesting that it happened already. It wasn't because of I-sun by chance. Of course, the girl first thought of her ex when she received a message from his sister. In the message, the girl wrote that she would like to meet again and talk normally, because they had only seen each other in passing. And she needed to treat him to something tasty in honor of getting a job. Yumin thought about it. Well, this was a good chance to do more than just have a heart-to-heart talk. She wanted to know at least something about I-sun. Surely her sister would spill the beans. I couldn't wait to tell Ha-gyeon about my new relationship for my ex. Then something crashed loudly. The girl shuddered in fear. Hoen flew out of the kitchen without holding the door, shouting after him that he urgently needed to run, that his friend would have to close the cafe himself. Taegan, who did not understand what had happened, shouted after him. He did not know where his comrade was running, but he only asked him to take care of the guests. The customers were whispering. Something serious must have happened, so the chef ran away so quickly, slamming the door. Some wanted to leave. Taegyun tried to calm the guests down, explaining that the cafe was not closing. The dishes were ready and everyone could continue eating. Yumin sat there very surprised. She suddenly remembered how he ran out of the club just as quickly, dropping his chair, having lost his wallet. At their first meeting. Was he really running to his ex again? Hun called a taxi and rushed off. When he got there, he jumped out of the car but didn't really know where to go next. He wasn't there yet. Someone called him. It was the actress's manager. He greeted them saying that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. They agreed with him. After all, he hadn't seen anyone from Soshan's circle since they parted. Very excited, he bombarded the manager with questions. He was worried about Soshan, why she fainted, whether they really had so much work. He couldn't get a response in. The manager said she would tell everything when they arrived. There might be reporters around, but nothing serious happened. No need to worry. They entered the building. It was a new construction with prestigious apartments. The door was opened with an electronic key. Well, Sojung was a star. Hoen looked at everything sideways. It was interesting after all. How good that the building was securely guarded. The actress had taken on a lot lately, he thought. Inside, the manager had already started telling. Soshan had taken on a lot lately. Took on a lot of projects. As a result, she was very overtired. Fainted at work. The guy asked what she was doing now. After that incident. Most likely she was sleeping. She needed to rest and gain strength. The manager said that she had not been injured when she fell, but the doctors had recommended that Seokon should rest completely for a while, and she pointed to the door of the room. There it was. Carefully, trying to be quiet, the guy opened the door and entered. The actress was lying on the bed. She was sleeping. He politely wanted to cover her up, but so as not to wake her up. But she felt it and woke up. She called his name, guessing. Yes, it was he here in the bedroom. He came after all. She had a presentiment of it. Her face flushed in her sleep. He assumed she had a fever. Seokon smiled. It was only when she got sick that he became worried and came to her. The girl stretched sweetly. She felt better after sleep. They saw each other for the first time after that quarrel. She was glad to see him, and asked if he missed her. She was a little upset by the quarrel, but she waited patiently. After all, she knew that he would come back to her anyway. She was very confident in herself and his feelings. He got up from the bed abruptly. Having told her that she needed to rest some more so that she could go back to sleep, he abruptly left. He did not want to talk anymore, so Sean tried to stop him. She asked him to stay, wanted to show her the house since he hadn't been to her house yet. To which he replied that he would continue the conversation later. Coming out of the bedroom, he wanted to help, but nothing more. He asked if he could use the kitchen and headed there. Of course they let him. He just wanted to cook some food, so that when she woke up they could eat. They asked him to stay too, to keep her company, knowing that otherwise Seo-chan would get angry. But the guy didn't want to. He made sure she was okay. He would take care of her food and leave. After all, there was no point in doing anything else. They had already broken up. There was practically nothing in the refrigerator. It was strange, the manager thought. If they had parted, why did he stay to cook and why did he come? Everything spoke for itself. They both did and said different things. In this, they were apparently always alike. That's why they were together. That's how the girl reasoned, watching him. After some time, Sojung walked into the room barefoot. The sun was shining brightly through the window. She was well rested and relaxed. The girl called Hendo, but no one responded. She froze a little. The manager was sitting in the room reading. She asked if the girl had slept well. The guy was gone. So-chan plopped down on the sofa in disappointment. So much effort was wasted. She had hoped for the manager, but she had let the guy go. He had cooked a lot of food and gone home. The girl explained that she tried to talk him into having dinner, but he replied that they had broken up. But they couldn't understand why he had spent so much time then. There were a lot of men with food on the table. Or maybe it's not love, but sympathy for a former lover who can't come to terms with the breakup. Seo-chan flared up and decided to declare a cold war on him. The manager looked at the girl. After all, it was because of him that she felt bad. She could do whatever she wanted, of course. But she didn't forget that she had to do her job well. Seo-chan looked down. She didn't know what to do next. Maybe she should talk to him again. At one point, she sighed heavily and asked him to take her to Hoenn. The manager reminded them that they didn't know where he lived now. The actress suddenly thought that when he was upset, he got drunk in his cafe. At that time, she had no idea what she would actually see. The girls from the store said goodbye after finishing their working day. They wished each other a good evening. They had worked well, and it was time to rest. Not forgetting about the morning incident, the girls discussed what had happened. Tegan didn't say anything, since he himself wasn't aware of what had happened. Yumin was the most worried. After all, he hadn't said anything, and she knew more about him than anyone else. She decided to call, but no one answered. She was torn between thoughts. In essence, she was nobody to him and knew much. And in general, maybe she was worrying in vain. Or maybe it didn't concern her. The girl remembered again how last time he rushed to his ex. And then they did not quarrel, but simply talked. Although it couldn't have happened without her intervention. It's not known how it would have ended. He then reminded her in an angry tone that it didn't concern her. She remembered. She stood there and hesitated where to go and what to do. Then she got mad and decided that let them do as they want. It was their business to quarrel or not. Stomping along the way home, she thought, what if he came back to the cafe? She was still very worried and decided to look there on the way home. As she approached the cafe, she saw that the light was on. But Taegun was supposed to close the place. Had he forgotten, or were they still open? She carefully approached the door and slowly peered inside. The light was on, but there was no one visible. Suddenly, she heard a crash, and saw Hoenn at the table. He was sitting, or rather lying right on the table. Apparently, he hit his head. She was scared for him and jumped up to the table. Starting to tug at his shoulder, she started calling him, asking if everything was okay. He didn't react. She became even more worried and tried her best to bring him to consciousness. It was useless. Getting closer, she realized that he was breathing. That was for sure. That meant he was sleeping. He had passed out. Looking around, she realized what was going on. There was one glass on the table nearby, and 3 empty bottles of wine. He was alone. He had simply gotten drunk alone that evening, to the point of unconsciousness. Her legs almost gave way. At some point, she was very nervous for him. Anyway, she was glad that he had only gotten drunk. She was so nervous that she collapsed on the floor. At some point, memories from her childhood came over her. She invited them. After all, everything was fine now. There was no need to think about the bad. Now the main problem was this guy, or rather his condition. It was necessary to somehow bring him to his senses and send him home. Yumin sat on the floor and began to rummage around for Taegyun's phone number. She couldn't leave the guy here in this state. A friend had to help. Suddenly, Hoen opened his eyes. He saw a girl and a dick sitting on the floor next to him. She was looking at the phone screen and didn't notice it right away. He reached out and grabbed her cap abruptly, and then he grabbed her forehead and hair. Yumin was scared. It was abrupt and unexpected, and a little painful. She flared up with rage, screaming at him for what he was doing. He only approached her, asking if her fever had passed. She jumped away from him in fear. Once he woke up, he could have given some kind of sign and not scared her like that. He woke up and sobered up already, apparently. His gaze was clouded. Apparently, he was still unconscious. She jumped up and was angry at herself for coming here at all. She muttered under her breath. He took her hand and whispered that he missed her. That was definitely unexpected. Why would he miss her all of a sudden? She didn't understand what was going on at all. He missed her so he didn't want to see her. Strange logic, Yumin thought. And then suddenly she realized what was going on. He thought it was his ex. The guy was dead drunk and just didn't realize who he was talking to. He was trying and basically absent from the real world. Yumin looked at him and saw herself. Apparently he was hurt just as much as she was. That's why he got drunk. That's why he's now escaped reality. It wasn't him who was cruel in the alley. It was the pain speaking. Hoen, like her, wanted to hurt in revenge, and everything he said was a lie. The puzzle was complete. That's why he would agree to take part in her adventure. He still wanted to prove something to his ex-girlfriend. Yumin squatted down in front of him and asked him to stop. She was not who he was imagining now. He would feel embarrassed about what he had done later. She didn't want to listen to the drunk's ramblings now. Hoen calmed down and apologized. He had never behaved so obediently before, probably because he was drunk. Still, he continued to squeeze her hand. Yumin asked him to let go. She wasn't his ex. She was a different person. The guy didn't want to do it at all, she asked. And he just shook his head and didn't agree at all. Obedience was gone. Oh, and it's hard to bring him to his senses. She reminded him who was in front of him. Hoen said the name and seemed to understand. And then he smiled and said that he understood. Weirdo. So that's how he thought she was all the time. Well, yes, he admitted it. She threw her wallet at him, asked him for fake dates. Yumin started to get angry at this statement. She didn't ask for it, she suggested it. He should think again before speaking. Suddenly she cooled down, thinking. That purse she had thrown away, that had been rude of her. She had always acknowledged that. She understood it, especially now. Suddenly Hoen began to speak quietly for that throw. He looked at her like that. Not angrily but tenderly with a smile, and sincerely whispered gratitude.